I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with a lot of people out there in the internet shooting world. And that has to do with the way that we are treating drills, and more specifically drills we all know. I'm going to use the bill drill as an example here, but because it's like everybody knows it. But a lot of people are using them the wrong way. So this episode is all about how you should actually use drills and how do you actually practice. All right. Now, if you're very experienced, you've been shooting matches a long time, this is probably not new information for you. But for my listeners out there, for you who is just getting into this and being interested and want to know how to get better, this one is for you. So welcome to the Everyday Marksman, the podcast where it's all about tactical skills for living a more adventurous life. I'm your host, Matt Robertson. Our website's everydaymarksman.co. You'll find today's show notes, our podcast episodes, our blog, articles, community of marksmen, all of that great stuff. Come on by the website, hit that big fat green subscribe button, get on the email list, and then join the Discord server. The invite is in the email when you get it. All right. On to the topic of the day, which is about thinking beyond the drill, or what I call teaching the test fallacy. So this idea comes, rather. I'm going to go no editing today. I'm just going to go ahead and talk, which means you're going to get the raw. All right. More than one time, I've interviewed John Simpson, and he said this phrase to me that says, "You don't prepare for the test by practicing the test." And I totally get where he's coming from. All right. It's a call out against shooters who think that the path to improvement is merely about faster and faster times on their drill of preference. And while true, that does show that you're getting better, you don't get better by practicing the drill by itself. Okay. There's a distinction there we're going to get to. My observation is that a shooter's preferred game, if you will, usually dictates what drill they're going to care about. So bill drills, classifiers, a 1 to 5, dot torture. Some of them track more defensive, some are more competitive, handgun, long gun, all the disciplines out there. Like there are different like accepted drills in the communities and that people like to go after. It's a lot like the gym in a way, because if you ever hang out with a bunch of guys who lift a lot of weights, inevitably you're going to hear, "Yo, bro, what's your bench press?" All right. It's like what's your bill drill time is like asking what's your bench press, right? It's a way for these shooters to kind of compete with each other and see roughly where they stand. But there's a rub though. Being good at a particular drill does not automatically translate to being particularly good at all of the other related shooting skills. All right. A drill or a classifier is nothing more than a point in time indication to compare yourself against. All right. The bill drill is an example here. So this is one of my favorites, so I'm going to reference it a lot. But the entire drill consists of, from the draw, fire 6 shots as quickly as possible at an IPSC target that's 7 yards away. That's it. That's the drill. All right. It's a maximum effort test, a lot like lifting a 1 rep max in competition. What I take issue with is the idea that the drill is going to teach you anything in particular. 6 shots is not enough to teach anything. All right. And I don't know what it is about the shooting sports that people get this wrong, but in every other pursuit, whether it's strength sports, whether it's music, which my wife has a great example of this one that I'll mention, whether it's writing or archery, you name it, everybody understands that you don't prepare for that one all-out test by only practicing the all-out test over and over again. But somehow in the shooting world, we have this idea that you can just show up and always go max effort all the time and you're going to succeed, and you just won't, right? That is not how this works. When I was in the Air Force, I used to see this all the time because some guys, and inevitably the ones who really needed to actually train right, but they didn't. And so they thought they were going to prepare for the PT test by doing it once or twice a week, every week for like a month. And somehow they were going to get better at all the events. But it's not how this works. What you have to do is target the weak points, build a volume of practice addressing those specific weak points, usually at easier levels than your maximum. And then over time, that builds up, and then you get better at a maximum level. All right. So let's talk about another way of approaching this, because this actually gets into my day job, which I don't talk about very often. A significant portion of my day job involves technical certifications, developing exams, and another part of it is developing all the training programs to help people pass those exams. All right. when we create a certification exam, it's just a process of compromises, all right? What we do is we bring in a team of industry subject matter experts, we call them SMEs, and have them work through a process of documenting all of the skills and knowledge required to be successful at the level of the test. All right. So if I say like a level 1, 2, 3, and level 1 is like you're the first person at the job, versus level 3, like you're an expert at the job. Like what does someone who just joined your team need to know to be successful versus like that's a level 1 versus someone who's been doing it 15 years and they're an expert. What do they have to know? All right. Now at the end of this process, this list usually ends up being dozens of items long. All right. And then each one of these items, we call them objectives, has subcomponents to it. And we go through another process where we have to prioritize all of them, most important to least important. And by the time we're done, we have this ranked order of all the skills and knowledge someone needs to be successful at whatever the thing is that we're trying to test. All right. Now, here's where things get challenging, because if the test is only going to be, say, 60 questions long, and this particular team wrote out 70 objectives, number one, there's just flat out not enough space to ask everything. So let's say we then get to 60, we cut out, all right, we'll just drop the bottom 10, we'll get the top 60. Well, that means only one question per objective. One single metric is not enough to comprehensively evaluate what someone knows. So that usually means we have to cut out like a lot to get to the top 20 objectives. And then we distribute them evenly. So like in a 60 question test, maybe some objectives get 5 questions, some get 3, some get 2, maybe the least important get 1. And I say least important out of that top 20, right? So that's just like number 20 out of 60 is getting 1 question. And the ones that are like beyond number 20 get nothing. So how does this come back to the idea of shooting drills? It means that when you see a shooting drill, it's meant to be this whole summary that's nothing but a series of compromises of all the skills. And there's a lot of things that get left out, right? In the end, you end up with a certification or a drill that provides an objective standard to compare against, but it's not a complete picture of someone's actual knowledge and capabilities. So when it comes to preparing for these tests, people are lazy, right? In my test, when someone asks for help passing the exam, they almost never want to know what skills and variations they should practice and improve on. They want to know the questions ahead of time so they can study the answers. And to be honest, I do the exact same thing. All right. Years ago, when I got my amateur radio tech license exam, they published the questions online. So I studied the questions and the answers, and I got 100% on the test. All right. I'm not going to say that I became like really good at doing radio. I just memorized the test. And that's what most people want to do. That's not how it's supposed to work. The test only exists to show you an objective point in time metric of where you stand on that test. It says nothing about all the other things that it did not measure. So think about the bill drill again. The only thing it measured is how fast are you from a draw to 6 shots at 7 yards on an IPSC target. It says nothing about 15 yards from a low ready or from a kneeling position or a prone position. You can only extrapolate from there unless you just want to run another test that looks at those things. Now, when you complete a test, you get a score out of it. And ideally, you could break that score down to figure out where your weak links are. So in my certification test, we give you a section-by-section score, so you see which groupings of objectives you did well yet or poorly yet. In shooting, we've got split times and accuracy standards. So if you see that your first shot was slow, then you know you have a problem with the draw. If you have fast split times from shot to shot, but not great accuracy, well, now you have a sight tracking issue. If accuracy is good, but split times are slow, then you have a recoil management issue. All right. So after spending time analyzing your weak links and testing them, or not testing them, and practicing them, then you get to test again and see if you've improved. So let's talk about how we actually go through and address the weak links. Okay. The first step to improving your score in any drill is to isolate that weak link. All right, what is the thing that you actually need to improve on? And your goal is to remove as many other variables as possible so you can focus only on the one thing. Only focus on the one thing. As Coach Dan John put it, if you try and chase 2 rabbits at the same time, you'll end up catching neither. So in other words, if you run something like a bill drill or one of my martial marksman drills on the website, everydaymarksman.co, there's a plug, or anything else, and you decide you suck at everything, and be honest, many of us will, then only pick one thing at a time to work on. All right, don't try and do it all at once. So let's say you've got a slow draw, mediocre accuracy, and slow split times. You're better off picking one of those things to work than all three. Which one you do doesn't actually matter right now, because improving any of them are going to help your overall score. Okay? So once you pick the thing, the next step is finding a way to objectively measure progress on that one thing. In shooting, it almost always means the shot timer and your target. All right, especially if your target has scoring rings on it. I know IPSC just has the big A zone. This is where I like bullseye targets, to be honest, because X rings, 10 rings, 9 rings give you a lot more data. So once you've picked the metric, now you put it into practice. So how do we actually do practice? I'm going to go back to the idea of strength training again. All right. Over the last couple of years, I spent a lot of time reading and studying all these strength training programs from different coaches going back to the Soviet Union. There's a recurring theme. All right. And I think this theme is just as applicable to shooting as it is to strength training. And after I was talking about this episode with my wife, who is a professional musician, she said the exact same thing is true of learning how to play music. All right. Most of your time when you're trying to improve something specific, most of your time should be spent in an effort range that's, say, 70% to 90% of what your maximum ability is. I'll say that again. When you're trying to get better at something specific, you should spend most of your time practicing at the 70% to 90% effort range. Because if you're always chasing that raggedy limit, most of the time, it's just going to lead to stress and burnout. And doing that too much is either going to result in no progress or you're actually going to get worse. With music, as my wife says, this means if you're going to, she's a classical clarinet player. So she was in a concert and she had this big solo coming up, a very complicated piece. If she just went right at it and tried to practice it at full speed all the time, it was not going to go well. So she slowed down the tempo and practiced the tempo at a slower pace and then gradually sped it up until she was mastering the full speed version. With weights, that's actually pretty easy. You just take a percentage of what you could do for one all-out repetition. So let's say you can squat 315 pounds for one repetition cleanly. The bulk of your strength practice for the squat should now be between 220 and 285 pounds. That is how you get better. Consistent and progressively more challenging exercises Consistent and progressively more challenging practice builds the correct motor pattern while also accumulating stress on the body, and that drives the adaptation to get better. I'm going to emphasize 2 points there. Consistent and progressive. You need to show up regularly, whether it's 2, 3, 4 more times per week. It doesn't matter, but you must show up consistently. You also need to make it progressively more difficult within a target range over time. So how do we apply this to shooting specifically? All right. So let's say you determine your raggedy edge of performance on the draw is 1.5 seconds from beep to shot on target, all right, from the draw. 1.5 seconds. We want to improve this, all right, which means we don't always want to just constantly practice at 1.5 seconds. We want to refine our movement pattern. So let's pick a range that's 70 to 90% as fast and build consistent repetitions. So I'm going to get my shot timer out. I'm going to set our par timer for 1.95 seconds, which is about 30% slower, and perform 10 perfect repetitions. And I'm not going to try and beat the timer. Your goal is drawing and breaking the shot exactly at 1.95 seconds or as close to it as you can get without going over. Do this for 10 shots. Consider it like one set in weightlifting, and then do that several times in one practice session. Always make every repetition perfect. Always train fresh and focus. If you feel like you're having a bad training day, then walk away. We do not want to reinforce poor performance by repeating it over and over again. It's a tip from Laney Basham with Winning in Mind. Great book. Now, over the course of several strings and sessions, we're going to keep reducing that par time, whether it's from 5/100ths of a second to 1/10 of a second at a time. And then repeat. Get progressively more challenging. We're going to go from 1.95 to 1.9, 1.9 to 1.85, 1.85 to 1.8, 1.8 to 1.7. All right. At any point, if you feel like the par time is pushing you to the limit of what you can do, stop there, back it down again a little bit, or just walk away to the next session. All right. By the time you get to that 90 to 95% speed, which is going to be 1.65 to 1.57 seconds, your draw time will be smoother and less frantic. And I guarantee that your actual raggedy edge performance has improved. I wouldn't be surprised if it's gone from 1.5 to 1.2 or faster. All right. Now, this 1.2 seconds is your new baseline. We repeat the entire process over again. We back it down 30% and rebuild up to see if we can get it down to 1 second. All right. This is how you get better, whether it's shooting skills, fitness, music, whatever it is. The whole point is you have to select an objective metric, isolate it, work up to your performance against it using consistent and progressively more challenging conditions. Now, the challenge here is going to be that we can't improve everything all at once. So you have to be judicious with your time. This is what it means to find your weak links. The absolute best shooters and the strongest men in the world, the best physiques in the world, these are people who've been doing it for years. They've been showing up consistently for years, always evaluating their weak links, always addressing them and bringing everything up one little bit at a time without letting anything else backslide too far. That is what real progress is about. So bring it back to the beginning. We don't want to practice the specific test over and over again. It's just simply not the best way to improve our abilities. What we want to do is pick the test and use it as an indicator of roughly where we're at on that set of skills. And if we decide we want to get better at that set of skills, then we break the test down to what is it actually evaluating. Then you pick the piece of that you're weakest at. All right, like I said, a build drill, it could be from the draw, it could be your split times, it could be something else. It could be an entirely different drill. If it's a Viking Tactics 1-to-5 drill, it could be your side-to-side transitions from target to target, or it could be your accuracy, your split times. You get the idea. But once you pick the thing you want to improve, you isolate it. How do you measure that one specific thing? And then you work on it. You back it down the intensity a little bit and build it up slowly over several practice sessions. And you could do this a lot with dry fire, by the way. You don't have to go burn a ton of ammo to practice this. As with weight training and shooting and everything else, it's very easy to get lost in the ego of things. But in the end, we're not here for ego. All right, the martial marksman, the philosophy of everyday marksman is not about flashing your ego about how badass you are because look at your split time or your build drill time, whatever else. Those are nice indicators, but don't stake your identity on it. There are too many things we're trying to be good at and maintain proficiency at. The whole goal is it's a metric for yourself to improve on. And that's all I've got today, my friend. Thank you for listening to The Everyday Marksman. Make sure you come by the website, everydaymarksman.co. There you'll find more episodes like this one. You'll find our articles, our awesome community of marksmen, the YouTube channel, which, by the way, YouTube channel's been doing pretty well. I'm surprised by the comments I get because these podcast episodes also show up on YouTube and I always get comments on it. It's really, thank you all. So come up by the website, everydaymarksman.co. Make sure you join the email list, join the Discord server. We have lots of great conversations in there. A lot of ideas for new drills that come around and kind of input of what projects I'm working on in the background. But the latest one being getting into PCE seeds. It's been a very, very fun project. All right, I'm going to stop rambling. Thanks for joining me. I will catch you next time. Have a great day.